everybody.
Good morning.
Marty.
Good morning.
Yeah, apparently we got deemed the tech savvy ones.
Right.
So there's your nice boost for Friday.
I heard that as we were headed over.
Right, that's
it was
a big
like
compliment.
the tech savvy, and I'm like, oh man, I better figure out how to do this then.
But don't screw this up, Lisa.
Right, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking, Marty.
So, you know, this is kind of an interesting group here, you guys. Becky, you are joining us, and you will be capturing our notes and minutes, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And I put the questions right there in the chat for you.
Perfect. Thank you. I think it's kind of interesting because we have 3 newer regents, and then myself and Lisa, who are new but not newer. So the Board of Regents, as you probably are gathering, you know, is definitely going through an evolution as well. And so I think the timing for this concept of the one WSU system is really, really excellent, because it's with fresh eyes and fresh leadership, I think, to kind of look at that and not necessarily be predisposed to what it was or how it was before. Just for context, I know since I've been on the board, and you know, Lisa came just shortly after me, we have been pretty intentional about pushing Kirk on that structure that you just saw. I mean, it's kind of insane, right? That he's coming into a university at the time that he came in that had a massive deficit, and he's trying to figure out that fiscal responsibility and recovery. And then at the same time, you know, he has a vice chancellor or vice provost who is stepping away. So he was operating without one. And then Brian Slinker came in and assisted for a period of time. And then trying to kind of, you know, launch a medical school. I mean, it's been a lot on his plate. So I'm really, really excited to see this document and to see the work that they've done. It's a really big deal. And I think Elizabeth you know, needs to be given a lot of credit for this too, because I think she's largely the mastermind behind it and has that ability to kind of help Kurt go up while she kind of gets in the detail there. So any questions that you guys might have just before we kind of jump into the 2 questions, any further context or comments on that? Okay. So first question, it's easy and something pretty straightforward. What should the WSU system look like in 5 years? And again, you know, I'll maybe just start. I tend to be a little biased, and I understand that, and I try to kind of keep myself in check because I am heavily weighted to the WSU Pullman campus just by the sheer nature of my time as a student there, my physical proximity to it, and then I've been a part of the WSU Spokane system since its inception, and then obviously my role in the medical school that took over my life for like about 8 years. With Elson Floyd and getting that stood up. And I'm not sure that WSU is maximizing its ability and potential to be delivering this kind of rural healthcare that it's rooted in some of our other locations. And so I was glad to hear them talk about the extension program and Yakima. Because I think we have real opportunity. So I personally would like to see the WSU system have more of its healthcare expertise integrated into all of our locations, not necessarily just Spokane.
I agree with that. As someone who grew up in the Yakima Valley, I'm very thrilled to hear of thoughts about moving into that community, which I think is really needed. And also
Enrique, I'm sorry, it's really difficult. Are you anybody else having a hard time hearing Enrique?
Okay, let me pull this. How's this? A little bit better?
Oh, much better. Thank you.
Sorry, I had moved the mic. I was just going to say that I'm thrilled to hear about, looking at Yakima, because the county is nearly 50% Latino, and that's only going to grow. And that's very important over there. And also the opportunity, I think, for younger Latino students to have, an avenue to get to be a part of WSU. And not everybody can go to Pullman and spend time there. A lot of these kids they have to work, and as well as try to try to go to school and do other things. So to me, that's very crucial. Also, the fact that rural areas like Yakima really need healthcare services. I mean, right now with COVID, it is we all know that the racial disparities are hitting communities of color extremely hard.
Yeah.
So, I just have complete support for this. And I like the idea, and not just because it's going to go to the Yakima Valley where I grew up, but also because I think it's important that WSU have a presence strong around the region, and particularly throughout the state. I mean, we need to grow it. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. John, you?
Thank you, Marty. And I agree with Enrique. And I think it may be helpful, and I don't know that we'll have the time to do this here, but we might want to think of some tenets that we really, want to make sure that, so we understand what our guiding principles and our North Star is, so to speak. But diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is along the lines of what Enrique was saying, I think would be very, very important, no matter what we do, where we are, that's what who we're trying to be in the community. And the individuals, our students that we serve, and how we serve the broader communities for the long term. So it may be helpful at some point to actually script some tenets that become our North Stars that we can think about to help us achieve our goals.
I love that, John. Actually, I think that probably is a really good starting point. And Becky, if you could be sure to kind of capture that. I think we have an interesting opportunity, and we even did this when we were doing the medical school, but WSU Vancouver led this effort long time ago in identifying itself to be something different than what the University of Washington can and does, right? And so we're constantly kind of like, figure out, like, let's not try to be that. Let's try to figure out the niche that we can slide into and how we slide into that. And weirdly, and I don't know what it is, but it always feels like you get a seat at the table at Washington State University, regardless of what kind of a donor you might be, what kind of, position you might hold in a community. And I think trying to find kind of identifying that who we are trying to be and why we want to be that, and then the outcome of who that serves is really, really important. And that there's an overarching element to it. And then for each of these areas, there's a unique niche that we are serving, whether it's like Vancouver, Lisa, or it's the Everett campus and that Everett community. That to me is kind of an interesting concept. So Lisa, we haven't heard from you, so maybe your thoughts.
Well, I really love where this conversation's going. I think one of the things that does make us a little bit more unique and special is, as Enrique mentioned, like Yakima, it's being able to meet students where they are without forcing them to go to an urban environment. Yet we do have urban centers that, if that is the environment that you're interested in, we do have bigger cities where we're located in or located nearby. I think this whole mission, being a land-grant university, that there is a real need to focus on what that means in terms of how we live that, which ties in really nicely with what John mentioned and our need to articulate those values. I also think, and you will not be surprised that I'm going to say this, Marty, we have to share our story in a more comprehensive and robust way. So there's so much we are doing, there's so much we are leading, and yet I don't know that we have the resources to be able to tell the story in a much broader way. So our story isn't just Washington State, our story is a national and international story. And I think we have to continue to invest in a way that our values show up, and our students know that we are in so many places. That map is so powerful. I love seeing the extensions and the different campuses. So that would be one kind of major point that for me became really clear as I was thinking about this question. And then the second is a little bit more operational, but ties to the idea that we have a uniqueness in each of our campuses, a different personality, a different kind of reason why you might want to go to one campus over the other. And yet operationally, I think there's a lot of challenges in moving from one campus to the other, which seems like, why would we not be able to make that work easier? And so I know that's part of this plan. But you know, for the longest time, our big issue was Butch. Like, we can't get Butch in, you know, Vancouver, and why is that? And
Yeah.
you know, the process associated with it. And every time I think about some of the challenges operationally, I think about this ridiculous amount of time spent on being able to have Butch, which is a symbol of our WSU spirit. And I think that for me in the next 5 years, we really have to find ways to be much more integrated. So that was a lot, Marty. I was
No, it
so
was awesome.
excited we were
Thank you.
doing these
Really
breakout
good.
sessions.
Arlie, I'd like to give you an opportunity too to, from your vantage point, we're interested in hearing kind of what you think about WSU in the next 5 years.
Thank you. So I think, okay, it's gonna sound a little bit like an oxymoron, but I think we should be specializing and generalizing WSU as a system. So I'll go with the second part first. So generalizing, I think it's important, like we're mentioning, like with the Yakima campus, it's really cool to like have that accessible to the people in that community, but we need to make sure that those students feel supported and they have the same resources as, I would say, a Pullman, because then like moving away from that whole branch like campus or branch system where they feel like kind of like lower on the tier, if that makes sense, because a lot of people will choose Pullman because, or like a lot of students at other campuses, like, I guess if I could like put it lightly, kind of feel bad in like at times because they're like, oh, like maybe I should have gone to Pullman because we don't have this resource here.
Yeah.
Or like feeling like you have to start. I think that would make it like more generalized where like the students, because I can say I feel a little guilty in saying this because coming from the health sciences campus, Yakima was kind of our branch because some of our students like in the pharmacy and the nursing program go there, and they most certainly don't have the same resources that we do at the Spokane campus. And they tell us all the time how they feel like, man, maybe I should have like waited like another semester. And like that's the whole point of the accessibility of having these other like, I guess like campuses across the state, which I think is really cool that like we can offer that to them. But I think they should feel supported and not feel like, man, I made a bad decision by going to this campus, even though like maybe financially it was better for them, geographically, like it's easier so they could be closer to the community that they want to be around, or for whatever reason it may be, like they shouldn't feel bad. It should only, like in a perfect world, it should only be positive reasons for choosing whichever campus you go to. And then that's going back to like the specializing thing where I think each campus does have its own identity. Like as through my time through WSU, going to each campus, it most certainly looks a lot different, especially me coming from Hawaii. Like I've never really been to Washington before. I go to each one, I'm like, this seems like I'm in a different country, if that makes sense. Where like you're in like in Everett, like you're near Seattle, it's booming, it's the city. And like I said, coming from Hawaii, we don't have billboards and we don't have like a lot of like, we don't have exits on the highway that are on the left side of the highway. Like it's only right side exits. So that caught me off guard and things like that. And then I go to Tri-Cities and like they have like the wine country and like, you know, a lot of the research, they have all that space available to them. And then Pullman, of course, is like, you know, like the hub, right? So I think that's something, like I said, it seems kind of weird to do both, but in a perfect scenario, I think we should generalize so that we can allow students to feel that they can pick a campus like for like mainly positive reasons, that and that they don't feel bad for not picking another one, and that they feel supported and they can, I guess, eventually find that niche for whatever specialty it is. Like if their goal is to be a pharmacist one day, then maybe they can start in Everett for maybe a year or whatever, and then eventually transfer over. Or that way they don't have to go to Pullman or have to go to Tri-Cities or something like that. It's like kind of like the idea that I'm getting at. Of course, this probably will take a lot longer than 5 years, but I think if we have that like idea just out there, then it's like, okay, we know what we're working towards, or like, you know, making sure we don't forget about like, I guess, what, like making sure that there is no that decision when choosing WSU, wherever you go.
Right, right. It feels like you've engaged and you're a part of that. So that's great. Well, I want to keep us on time. I think what I heard, and I think Lisa, for us, and Becky maybe capture this, there is a separate discussion that WSU probably as a leadership team needs to have around their investment of sharing their story, because that's an area, John, Enrique, that you might not be aware of, but marketing WSU is, I mean, it's actually shocking how little funds they have towards that. Like when I say little, it's little tiny funds. And I think there is something to say around making that a priority as we go forward. And I know you have like the two big marketing people and communications people around that, but we have a really interesting story to share in the next 5 years, but you have to invest to make that happen with people and resources. And there are none available to really do that. Phil has a tough job with a very, very small budget. So as we, look and what will this vision mean for us as a board of regents? And again, as I hear us talk about, and I appreciate, Enrique, your comment of we need to grow. I mean, we're having this conversation with our people here at STCU of we're constantly doing acquisitions of smaller credit unions, and everybody just kind of wants to stay put, but at the same time we have such heavy penetration in certain areas that we actually can't grow anymore, so we have to go elsewhere to kind of keep expanding and delivering what we believe is a set of services that people need. So WSU, I think, needs to do that. I think that for me as a board of regent and this vision, I struggle a little bit with being careful to not dilute WSU so much across the state of Washington that we are sprinkling WSU pixie dust and not maybe that we're doing about 65% good and maybe not 90% great. So I worry a little bit around how we be really intentional of where we're at and how we deliver, the experience, as well as I do believe you have to protect the mothership so that at the end of the day, Pullman is Pullman and Pullman is that mothership, and that entity also needs to be protected and ensured that it's stood up so that it can kind of be the backbone for all the other pieces. So that's for me really over the course of my vision is how to be careful a little bit on how we grow, where we grow, and in the intentionality of it. Thoughts, comments?
Yeah, so I'd like to take that one on. I hear what you're saying, and if we go back to what I'd said before about what our purpose is it's education, and that we can provide the education to the community in a variety of different localities. And telling that story, Marty, I agree with you. I think that is so important. As a regent, I think that all of us have the opportunity, if we had, a pitch deck, so to speak,
Yeah.
where, for instance, in Seattle, both Enrique and I have connections and contacts through a variety of associations, whether it be the Downtown Seattle Association, the Chamber of Commerce, my role as a director on the board of Cascade Public Media, which has Crosscut and others. I mean, there could be interviews, there could be a variety of things to be able to tell the story also. I think what you want to be is, you want to be so attractive to so many different of our customers, our future students, and the communities that they serve, that they want to attend the school because of its ethos and what it stands for. And we also have to think about, as I mentioned, diversity, equity, and inclusion is to ensure that we can be those things for our customers in those localities, and think about the demands that they have on them. Single parents who are trying to lift themselves up through education, they don't have the ability to go to Pullman. and have the collegiate experience that is traditional. I think our customer base can be a lot broader, and we can be a lot more things to more people if we think in those broader terms. I think there'd be a lot of opportunities even within the Seattle market to be able to extend, and through an extension program. And I know that they exist and that it's there right now, but it's
how do you access them?
Exactly. It's like the best kept secret.
Yeah. Very good. Excellent.
Can when I used to do a weekly current affairs show on KCTS that I did for like 13 years. And one of the things that I built a relationship with Elson Floyd, so that and Elson just gave me his phone number and said, hey, anytime you need a guest or whatever, somebody, decides to not show up, let me know. I'm over here 4 days a week. I'm happy to do it. So I always took advantage of that. And I told Kirk this, is that he needs to have more of a presence over here in the Seattle area. We need to grow his presence. Elson, I think, he had this kind of dynamic personality, but also represented, I think, more than just being a university president as an African-American man. But he was very dynamic when he spoke. And not to say that Kirk can't do that, because I think obviously he's a good leader, he speaks well and all that. But I wonder how many people really know him. And
100%. Yeah.
He and we have a lot of presence over here, WSU presence, alumni. But I think, we got to get him over here more often.
Enrique, just not to interrupt you on that, but that is the sole reason that one system and Elizabeth is so important, is that the Board of Regents prior to your part, coming on he has so much to offer, but he's so mired down in Pullman dealing with really tactical things that we've missed some time of positioning Kirk, to your point, as a state leader and an equal to Anna Mari, and has things to offer and should be shaping policy and should be a person that the governor is picking up the phone and calling. But we haven't been able to position him that way, partly because of the system itself being unconducive, but also I'd say because we also don't have an intentional public relations, communications, story, robust program to be saying, Kirk, you're out 3 days a week with guys like Enrique and John over in Seattle meeting people. And you're with Lisa here and you're with Marty here. He's fabulous and he has so much to offer, but we haven't been able to engage him that way.
Yep. Hey, have him do a podcast.
Yeah.
I'm serious. I do 2 of them, and it's a growing thing. It doesn't take a lot to do, and anyway, there's opportunity there to get the voice out.
Yeah,
you got to think out of the box about this stuff, and also I'd like to see more presence of him from a social media standpoint. It's occasional, but it also has to be strategic, and that, particularly with things dealing with COVID right now and all of that. But there's ways to grow this where it's not going to bust your budget, but it's really a matter of thinking about what's your approach. And it might take a bit more of his time to focus on some of those things, or someone to really focus on that. But you got to take advantage of those types of things and get him more presence, or just even have him write editorials, or write opinion pieces on issues, so that he's speaking out. Build the brand, John. That's there you go. Good friend of mine is Gene Juarez, and we grew up in my hometown in Wapato, and Gene, just his name has a brand.
Yeah, it is a brand.
And Gene always said to me, "You're a brand. You need to do that." And that's and Kirk is the WSU brand.
And Elson, that's what Kirk battles a bit, is Elson had a brand.
Yeah.
both as
I
Elson
think that'd be-
Floyd and as WSU. Lisa,
But-
what just?
yeah. But we just need to help him build the brand.
Yep.
So that's the other part of it. I don't want to dominate this, but I just wanted, one of the point that John made about having kind of a North Star and things like that. In this time where we're going through this kind of racial reckoning and the country's trying to not fall apart, it just seems to me that this is sort of part of that, is that to be able to this whole idea of trying to branch out in particularly like an area like Yakima and things like that. But that to me should be part of the whole effort of breaking down systemic racism. And it should be part of the university's approach and mission. And that should be a big deal, I think. And I think if we are able to branch out in areas like Yakima and things like that, where you have people of color that are in one particular location, that's only going to help the university. It helps its brand, its presence, and but it's also part of a bigger issue, and that is that we've got a definite problem here regarding systemic racism. But I think that's a way of like us branding or at least making this part of the mission.
Yep.
Because the only way we're going to break those things down is if you put some importance on it. So I think that's as much of an important thing as is our football team and our academic success and all of that. Because if we don't do that, then we're not doing our job.
Yep. I'm going to go to Lisa. It really comes back to being a tenant, to John's point there. So Lisa,
Yeah,
I'll give you a little bit of time here, and then Arlie will kind of wrap it up with you because we just have a few minutes left here. So Lisa, your thoughts?
I think this is a great conversation. One of the things that I'd like to see us do is be able to establish a little bit of kind of that Regent plan, which I think, our second question was really around kind of our vision for the Board of Regents. I'm thrilled with the amount of diversity that's showing up on the board. And, I think that this President's Commission on Campus Culture and Climate is going to be significant and important, just to kind of continue to build on Enrique's comments. I think that it has to be front and center. It has to be our value. It has to be part of that North Star. And so as we think about kind of how the board can help Kirk in the work that he's doing, I think it would be helpful if we understood what that might look like. And there's already been some great ideas. And so, I know there's a real focus on Seattle, and I think that's terrific, and we should continue to do that. We have a totally different media market in Portland. We have a totally different group of stakeholders, and I am anxious for us to ensure that we have our operational systems in place so that we can elevate Kirk, so we can be doing advocacy at that state and national level, both in Washington and in Oregon. I do think that there is a real opportunity right across that bridge for us to be bringing in, students and, there's a lot of different stakeholder groups. Alumni get excited when we start to see our brand built around a strong leader, as well as just the story that we're telling. We have faculty and staff. We have, philanthropists that continue to want to give to WSU. But we have to really, I think, continue to build that brand and get our regents with our president able to continue to tell that story. So kind of anxious to see how we can really tangibly help him continue to expand and help grow our footprint in the area beyond just the Washington state boundaries. So
That's good, Lisa. Thank you very much. Arlie, we'll just pass it to you for about a minute here, and then we're going to jump back on.
Yeah, I think the use of these system leaders, thankfully, like we are hiring within, like with Elizabeth Chilton, like we're going to be using her a lot in this like plan. I think getting her like rolling and supporting her a lot will be very useful for, like you guys say, building the brand, just because like when I meant generalized, I just meant getting them like kind of basic needs, if that makes sense, like each campus, so that like, but in the same way, like you're saying, it's not like we're going to neglect Pullman and then build every other campus up. That's where the specialization comes in, where if we have each like campus, which there'll be the new WSU Pullman Chancellor, then each campus can kind of build on their own and like you guys say, like offer a lot more to students. Because I think that accessibility is like the biggest thing, and that's where we're trying to like have our biggest reach. So I think getting the system leaders like up and running and giving them our support as Regents and giving them guidance where we see fit, I think will make their jobs a lot easier so that they can get the ball rolling. And then the 10-year plan can actually become a 5-year plan if we, work faster and work within the entire team. So I think that should be like a big focus as Regents, supporting our system leaders so that they're checking in with the individual campuses. That way, like there's not really, I guess, a lack of communication, so things don't fall behind.
That's a good point.
That's excellent. Thank you. So I'm just trying to capture, and in no uncertain terms here at Becky, I was just trying to capture a couple things of everything we have kind of said here. And I'm just putting it in the chat. It's just something I'd like you to carry forward, of a vision of being leaders of a one WSU system with a North Star that meets our future students where they need to be met, while being intentional in leading and addressing diversity, equity, inclusion, articulating a consistent message and story on who we strive to be and who we want to serve. I'm not saying that's it. I just am trying to kind of capture a little bit of what I was hearing from you guys. Do you think that kind of collects some of that, what we've talked about? The one other piece that I would really like to ensure that we capture, Becky, is the role Kirk needs to play in that as a state influencer, leader, and we need to be intentional and find new ways, to Enrique's point, around how we have a greater presence, how we have a more robust approach to the story we're telling, and thinking outside of the box in ways in which we deliver that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
With Kirk, with Kirk being the face of that, and quite frankly, I think our Board of Regents needs to be the face of that. WSU, there was a time when our regents were very visible and often we're influencing right alongside the various presidents we've had in the past. And I think Kirk welcomes that. And I think we have a pretty interesting, diverse and very eclectic board that he's building very intentionally as well. And let's use that and have him probably use it more effectively than what he's done to date.
It's a good summary.
Well, you guys, that's a great conversation. It's kind of nice to actually have a conversation just in a smaller group than just trying to always do that in such a large setting. So I've enjoyed the chance to do this with you guys. So thank you. And we'll go back. If you can go back now, you can see in the chat box there, you can click right back and it'll send us back into our regular meeting. So don't disappoint anybody, since we're the tech savvy group.
Good job facilitating.
Don't screw this up,
Yes,
you
great
guys.
job. Yeah,
Good job
great job,
facilitating,
Marty.
Marty. Yeah.
Thanks,
yeah.
guys.
This is a great discussion.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay.